Some people believe the spirit stays in the body for months after death.
While Bring Her Back's plot is mostly driven by its extremely varied characters, the film's super eerie resurrection ritual is undoubtedly at the very core of its premise. Through the tapes and videos from which Laura was studying up on this occult ritual, we see how the film had constantly been teasing a much larger world of supernatural horror, which could make its presence known in the upcoming sequel of Talk to Me. Similar to what they did with their debut in the horror genre, both of these films are set in Australia and focus on characters who are still reeling from the deaths of their loved ones and feel so defeated that they had to turn to supernatural means to try to reconnect with the one that they had lost. And if you know anything about most horror films, it's a no-brainer that trotting down the supernatural path to bring someone back from the dead has never been a good idea. But then again, we don't really see the ritual in action by the end of the film, as Piper defies all odds to get away from Laura's clutches. However, I was very keen to know the exact specifics of how the ritual works, what clue the film gives about the entity behind it, and how Laura discovered the ritual in the first place. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss how the resurrection ritual in Bring Her Back really works. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
We can bring her back.
What is the cost of the resurrection ritual in Bring Her Back? How does it work? Like I've already mentioned before, Bring Her Back's resurrection ritual is the core of the horror film, as it plays right into the film's gritty themes about the lengths grief can drive a person to, a point where nothing else matters other than finding a way to get out of said grief. We see that Laura has discovered an unnamed occult ritual that can successfully resurrect someone back from the dead. For context, Laura had lost her little girl in a drowning accident, and ever since then, life has not been the same. Right from the start, we get a very clear idea that Laura is involved in some kind of dark magic, as her house is surrounded by a painted white circle, and she secretly watches old VHS tapes of disturbing rituals with the strangely emotionless Oliver, who is supposedly her mute nephew. And to top it all off, during the wake for Piper and Andy's father, she quietly snips a lock of his hair. So if that doesn't make it seem like something's definitely wrong with this lady, I don't know what will. The whole deal behind the ritual that Laura intended to perform really hits you like a train off the rails. Laura never really got over the death of her daughter and let the grief consume her, and in the years since, she had thrown herself into studying an obscure, unsettling occult ritual that promised to bring Kathy back to life. But this ritual was not some harmless spell. As we see Laura piece together through old grainy VHS tapes, it turns out to be violent, disturbing, and deeply unnatural. Anyways, as Laura starts watching these videotapes, she discovers that the ritual had a 100% success rate, and all she had to do was to follow a few cutthroat steps. The first step for Laura was to recover the body of the deceased person. She believed that the soul can linger within the body for a certain time period, which in turn would give her a window to complete the ritual. Following that, Laura had kept Kathy's frozen corpse so that it could be used when she needed to resurrect her daughter. After this, the next step for Laura was to find 2 living hosts. The first host is to be used as a means of storing the lost soul in a living vessel. Doing this puts the host into a trance-like state, which is suggested to be under the control of a demonic force. But there's a certain catch here, as this host must remain within a specific space, determined by large circles. Yes, the same large white circle around Laura's house. If they somehow do step outside the circle, the host can painfully begin to regain control of themselves and potentially even disrupt the ritual. Another side effect is that doing this also leaves the host impossibly hungry, which is at par with the real purpose being to consume the flesh of their original body. Well, this is where Oliver comes in, the mute boy that Laura had kidnapped. His real name was Connor Bird, but Laura called him Oliver or Ollie. She told everyone that the boy was a selective mute, But the truth turns out to be far darker when we find out that in reality, Laura has allowed something demonic to take hold of him. According to the second step of the ritual, Oliver is meant to consume Kathy's corpse and then purge her soul into Piper's body, which would essentially transfer Kathy's soul into Piper and bring her back that way. This is exactly why Laura keeps Ollie locked away, as his hunger and the possession grows stronger by the day. Moreover, the ritual has to take place within the painted white circle on the ground where they all live, and that's why Ollie cannot escape. The biggest example comes when Andy unknowingly leads Ollie outside of it, and he begins to have a violent seizure, as if the demon inside him was being forced out. This chilling moment was more than enough to make it clear that whatever Laura was doing, it only works inside that white circle, and that no one was getting out of it so easily. Now we come to the second host of the ritual, who has to serve as a permanent host for the lost soul. According to what Laura saw in the videotapes, if the second person is killed in the same way that the original soul perished, then the host can just vomit up their own flesh into the new body's mouth. This basically transfers the deceased person to a new living body, erasing the soul of the second person in the process. Laura's videotapes suggest this process can work, leading her to follow them as a means of resurrecting her daughter Kathy. That's why Laura chose Piper to be the main host, who could help her bring back her own daughter's soul and transfer it into Piper's body in exchange for Piper's soul being cashed out. How does Laura even find the VHS tapes with all those resurrection rituals in them? Well, we can't say really where and how the exact origins of the resurrection ritual come into play here, because Bring Her Back offers absolutely no concrete explanation for where the ritual comes from, who discovered it, or exactly how it works. At this point, we're just eyeballing it all from what we have seen. But yes, I do remember that Laura was watching all the camcorder footage of this ritual being performed in Russian. Now, I'm not sure how she came across these tapes, or where she picked them up from, but there has been some clear implications in the film that her grief over losing Kathy led her down a dark path, forcing her to look for potential ways to be reunited with her daughter at any possible cost. So going at par with Talk to Me's embalmed hand, Bring Her Back sort of portrays this resurrection ritual as a global obsession that many people in different nations are aware of. If you've watched the Philippou brothers' debut film, Talk to Me, you must remember that in the film, where they show the means of communicating with the dead, it was performed from Australia to Greece, while the gritty resurrection ritual was recorded in Russian before news made it to Laura in Australia. While the exact way Laura found the ritual still remains a mystery, this definitely highlights how the modern age of technology has made it easier than ever to spread potentially dangerous ideas and messages around the world. So there's a good chance that Laura did not have to dig so much to come across the right ritual she needed to bring her daughter back from the dead.
It showed me a way to be a mother again.
How can Laura's arrest at the end of the film help spread word of this occult ritual throughout the world? The ending of Bring Her Back was really very tragic, with Piper and Ollie both surviving their intended roles as sacrifices for Laura's ritual, but Piper's stepbrother Andy losing his life in the process. However, the very public arrest of Laura, where she was last seen tightly clutching the body of her long-dead daughter in the pool, makes it horrifyingly possible that her story and the existence of this ritual will probably spread through the world. Given the brutal nature of Laura's actions, it would really not be surprising for this whole bizarre event to become a major news story on the global stage. I mean, just think about it. Coverage on a creepy house where a weird lady tries to resurrect her dead daughter by using the body of the partially blind child she adopted and the little boy she kidnapped and caged. If that isn't fodder for the conspiracy theorists, occult enthusiasts, and the media houses, what is? This, in turn, could actually end up spreading the news of this dark ritual like widespread wildfire, giving other people a chance to conduct the ritual to try and bring back their own deceased loved ones. Similar to the way that Talk to Me turned a ghostly connection into a party game around the world, there is a very big possibility that people could try to replicate Laura's actions in the world of Bring Me Back. Moreover, given the many unknowns about the nature of the ritual and the demonic entity that seems to be connected to it, this could be a major development for their entire world because, like I said, the information on this ritual is not very clear, thus giving people a chance to fill in the gaps by coming up with their own version of a resurrection ritual that could be even more deadly.
Talk to me.
How did the Philippou brothers connect Bring Her Back to Talk to Me? While Bring Her Back doesn't have any firm connections to Talk to Me, Danny and Michael Philippou have officially confirmed that both their two movies take place in the same universe. Apparently written almost at the same time as Talk to Me, Bring Her Back initially seems to have some thematic and worldly similarities to Talk to Me, but then again, the film lacked any clear connecting thread that would bind it to the same setting as Talk to Me. However, Danny Philippou has explained that the films are connected by a single world as they are currently working on a mixed media thing at the moment, which would help tie in everything eventually. That's definitely a big reveal for Bring Her Back, as it raises a lot of questions about the exact ways this world works and what the unseen and seemingly demonic forces exactly want from the people they encounter. As Danny Philippou noted, the actual lore connections between Talk to Me and Bring Her Back are not overtly featured in the films. However, there are a number of common elements that connect the films on many levels. Both movies introduce a mysterious form of supernatural entity while leaving out the lore dumps and exposition in exchange for more visceral showcases of the magical forces. This further gives the shared universe of Talk to Me and Bring Her Back a mysterious quality that other horror franchises could only wish to achieve. Moreover, both the films heavily lean on their Australian roots, setting each story in Australian cities. Bring Her Back even has an appearance from Talk to Me star Sophie Wilde, even though it's not the same role she had played before. At this point, the biggest connection between Talk to Me and Bring Her Back are the shared themes of grief and what it can cause people to do to themselves or others. In a way, Talk to Me's Mia and Bring Her Back's Laura are similar tragic figures, even if Laura becomes the overall villain of her story. Can the resurrection ritual from Bring Her Back influence the Talk to Me sequel that's in the works? Like we discussed before, both Bring Her Back and Talk to Me have been confirmed to share the same universe, which raises the possibility that the unseen supernatural forces at play in both movies are somehow connected. I mean, just think about it. Bring Her Back's resurrection ritual has given a clear hint that the lines between life and death can be blurred in multiple ways, even if the exact origins of how it can really be done, or if it can be successful, is yet to be revealed. This in turn raises a lot of questions about the upcoming Talk to Me, yes, the sequel, adding this in, with the number 2 in the title, which in my humble opinion should have been titled as Talk to Me 2. Anyways, jokes and bad puns aside, the Philippou brothers have already mentioned that their new film will also focus on new characters, but within the same world, while dealing with the same supernatural forces. In a way, Bring Her Back cements a primary emotional line through to the Philippou horror universe, forcing people to contend with the lengths of their own humanity in contrast to the dark forces operating behind the scenes. Bring Her Back only proves that there is more than just one supernatural force at work in this world, and that people who can be otherwise completely disconnected in person can still use modern technology to spread the rituals and practices. So keep that in mind. The Philippou brothers are probably trying to establish how easily supernatural rituals can move within this world, which could further be a big factor in Talk to Me's expansion of the original film. But that's just my 2 cents. What do you guys think? Will the Philippou brothers create a horror universe just as immaculate as The Conjuring? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.